On this power-packed episode of Game, the Fragate takes a trip from Stillwater to Steelport with the 3rd Street Saints. And we sit down with the guys behind Spec Ops: The Line. Men, make for your mice. This is Game. Hello and welcome to another geekalicious spread of the best digital delights to be had in your hands. This is Game and my name is Kelly, Queen of Hard Drives. Let me also introduce the man that gets the gears going, powers up the PCs and geeks out in the gaming den for 3/4 of the year, the Fragate. And what does he do in that little room for most of the year? Well, simple. He brings you the scoop on what games deserve your attention and hard-earned dollar, and which, well, don't. Well, for this week's review, here he is with his take on Saints Row the Third.
Hey gamers, Fraggy on the move this week as we get down and seriously dirty with the 3rd Street Saints in their latest open world adventure, Saints Row the Third. Now if you've been at your sandbox games for a while, you'll probably remember part 1, by all accounts a clone of Grand Theft Auto and also one of the first open world games available during the early days of the Xbox 360. But since then, the series has gone off on a bit of a wild ride, taking the much-loved Grand Theft Auto formula of big city chases and gunfights into slightly more risque territory with an over-the-top attitude to open-world action. Now this third installment sees the Saints, now media moguls in their own right, in an all-new location, the city of Steelport, and after a failed bank robbery, find themselves facing off against a corporation known as the Syndicate. So, new city, and from the looks of some of the early trailers, seems like they're taking this over-the-top attitude to all new heights. So take those PG signs and throw them out the door, as we check in with one of the raunchiest, most outlandish games to be released this year. Welcome to the city of Steelport. Now, easily the best thing about Part 3 is just the crazy number of activities you get to participate in, and just how varied they are. Aside from the by-now open-world staples like base jumping and the occasional car chase, you'll also get to try your hand at some pretty violent Japanese-inspired game shows where pandas are sacred, escort a tiger around town while keeping its need for speed in check, and even luchador Mexican wrestling matches. But that's not all! In between Tron-type bike races and bits of the game where you'll have to fight off zombie hordes with a sonic blast gun, you'll find yourself skydiving out of an exploding plane, bouncing off car bonnets in an attempt at insurance fraud, and even on Mars playing out your very own space opera. And after all that, there's even an old-school text adventure for those old enough to remember, and a mission which transforms your avatar into a toilet as you navigate cyberspace.
What's with that toilet? Oh my god, that's me!
Sorry about
Yep,
that.
it's that crazy. And I like that even though the general length of the game is quite a bit shorter than many open world games, clocking in at around 20 hours for the main missions, almost none of that time is spent doing something boring. Full speed all the way. Another thing I liked were the changes they made to the upgrade system, which no longer requires you to grind for points to advance. Completing missions and activities earns you cash and respect, which you can then use to buy weapons and gear. But the coolest thing I found to spend my cash on were the new abilities, which sort of act like leveling your character in an RPG. As you gain more cred, you'll be able to acquire a ton of new abilities like extra health, unlimited stamina, and even some cool sidekicks to help you in battle. Augmenting this economic minigame, you can also purchase property all around the island to further increase your hourly cash flow, and all in all, it really makes progressing in this game a lot of fun. And finally, Having played more than my share of open world games, I love that this game really doesn't take itself too seriously, putting fun above all else, and in doing so, fixes a lot of problems I had with many other open world sandbox games. Fall into the water? No problem, you don't have to swim all the way back to find some little ladder, just walk back to shore. Tired of looking at the minimap while driving? Well, you've now got GPS turning indicators right on the roads itself. I know it's not realistic, but then again, who cares? Now, unfortunately, a few niggling issues with this one, most of which stem from the artificial intelligence of your AI partners, as well as the general combat, which can feel a bit like a chore due to how dumb your enemies are. Bad guys can sometimes just stare blankly into space as they're being shot, and aside from glorified meat shields which spawn in waves, they rarely pose a real threat. Also, gamers who find themselves easily offended might want to stay clear, because Saints Row the Third is not only extremely juvenile in its presentation, but often veers into extremely sexist territory, with women treated as objects to be traded. I mean, there's a mission in this game where you're sent to save a bunch of working girls from a ship, but your reward for this mission is either to A, sell them back to the pimps you stole them from for some extra money, or B, get those girls to work for you. You know, as long as you aren't easily offended by violence or maybe some off-color language, or using a huge purple appendage as a weapon, you'll probably find a lot in Saints Row the Third to enjoy. It's a thrill-a-minute ride through some of the most absurd open-world scenarios to be conceived, and also some of the most pure, unadulterated fun I've had from a game this holiday season. Sure, it may not be as involved as something from the boys at Rockstar, but then again, after playing this, it's kinda hard to see how the next GTA will top this in terms of sheer imagination. If you got into playing video games for the immature fun of it, and let's face it, we're all kinda guilty, then Saints Row the Third is a definite must-buy.
To be a badass criminal come celebrity must be pretty awesome, but the criteria is pretty high as well. Nothing less than a six-pack. Although my philosophy has always been, why have a six-pack when you can have a keg? All right then, we're gonna press pause for a couple of moments, but when we come back, we remind you that the best things in life can be free. Online gems and some delectable demos to whet your appetite are just moments away. Stay with us. Hey fellas, and welcome back to Game. Let's waste no more time and get straight back into it. This time kicking off with the best things in life. Get stuck in with our weekly find of the most amusing free-to-play games the Triple W has to offer. Check it. This is Online.
Reaching the highest point, That's what's up for grabs on this week as we take a look at Culmination. An action platformer all about a fallen hero driven by desire as he embarks on his final journey to fulfill destiny as he sees it. One of the more engaging combat games that we've tried here at the office, this flash-based Fit of Rage comes packed with 15 levels of slashy fun as you lay waste to countless enemies using a deep and complex combat system which rivals many of today's better fighting games. A wildly chaotic title focused on delivering a unique and grand adventure. If you think you've got the moves, Culmination is available at the address below. Moving on, it's up, up, and away as we take to the skies, lending a friendly pilot's hand to our friend Hannah. In Hannah in a Chopper, take control of a small helicopter as you navigate the cavernous interiors of this physics-based puzzler. Now, pressing the arrow keys moves our friend around, but getting from place to place is a little less straightforward, thanks in part to puzzles that you have to solve along the way. So shuttle those pieces to and fro to make it through the underground maze. And what's cool, from airlifting objects and rescuing sailors down to herding sheep, Hannah will surprise you when you least expect it. So if you're in for some Humpty Dumpty heli action, make a date with Hannah at the address below. And last but not least, got an eye for detail. Fancy becoming a draftsman of sorts? Well, here's a little crash course in the arts of engineering. In Blueprint 3D, all the drawings have exploded, and it's your job as art apprentice to move and shape the broken lines to reveal the secret object hiding in the picture. Moving the picture around is as easy as moving your mouse, but the hard part comes from actually trying to figure out what's in it, as you look for clues and other recognizable features. What's more, each level takes just seconds to solve, making this one the perfect office distraction, even for the most casual of gamers. So spin me right round, baby, right round, as you work out this 3D puzzler at the address below.
Now, if you didn't manage to get those URLs, we'll have them up on our Twitter feed very, very soon. @ESS Game is who you need to follow. Get on it. Right, it's time for the segment where we bring you the best games that you can try before you buy. Now, the Demo Derby is on a mission to showcase some great games you can sample before you lay out the big bucks for the best titles. And this week, we're bringing you Around the World in a matter of minutes.
Up first in this week's Try Before You Buy, we burn some rubber and crack some skulls with the latest arcade racer out on the Steam portal. Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines! Because the demo for Ignite has just gone live. A glitzy take on performance motoring, this graduate of the Burnout Academy features a nice selection of cars styled after some pretty famous production line models. Now, aside from just racing and getting there ahead of your opponent, Ignite goes the extra mile, requiring players to also be as destructive as possible, with points for knocking over traffic cones or road signs. You also score points by drifting and drafting behind your opponent for some extra speed, points which can then be used on your Boost, a nitrous-fueled burst of speed which works great at blazing away from the pack. A slick take on action-oriented, adrenaline-filled racing, the demo for Ignite is out now. Next up, one for all the comic book fans. If you've always wanted to jump into the shoes of Europe's favourite kid journalist and explorer extraordinaire, well, here's your chance with the demo for The Adventures of Tintin. A game based upon the recently released 3D movie, The Secret of the Unicorn, this demo lets you play through a sampling of levels from the full game, showcasing some of the game's mechanics. with fluid animation that works wonders at setting the scene, as well as some fitting voice acting.
What do you want from me?
Hang in there. I still need you, Captain.
I wonder.
Captain!
I've got to say, playing this really did bring back a ton of memories from the old cartoons, and most of all, it was a lot of fun. The only thing missing was Tintin's dog, Snowy, following him around. So if you're looking for a little exploring for all ages, this globe-trekking adventure comes highly recommended. Do check it out at the link below. And finally, the closer. We dive into some modern military combat with Global Ops Commando Libya. A third-person shooter focused on squad-based gunplay. We follow Cornelius Pope, one half of a two-man commando unit sent to Libya in search of a Russian terrorist faction. The demo features 2 levels, one based in the jungle with its surrounding valleys and hills, and another set in a deserted production plant. Now, gamers used to other similar shooters may recognize the cover system. Working a lot like Gears of War, players can take cover behind large objects, popping out every now and then to lay down the hurt. Also, not many PC-exclusive third-person shooters around at the moment, so it'll be interesting to see where the guys take this with the added precision of the mouse and keyboard. So if you've always been one for the gameplay of Gears but didn't get round to buying a console, fire up that PC with some Global Ops with the demo available at the link below.
Well, I guess that's a relatively inexpensive way to travel the world. Well, those demos will certainly occupy you for a little while, at least until we bring you the next update of awesome demos for you to have a crack at. Time for another quick break, but don't worry, Game will be back in 2. And we dive into the deserts of Dubai as we take a look at a fantastic, wink, third-person shooter. Hey guys, thanks for sticking with us here on Game. It's Kelly with you on this jam-packed episode. But we're not done yet and there's still plenty more to come. Well, it's time to look into the proverbial crystal ball as we fast forward DeLorean style to what's coming to a console near you in the not so distant future. Buckle up boys, this is the preview. In this week's Look Ahead, time to pay a visit to our old friend Jackie Estacado as he battles his inner demons in The Darkness 2. A brutal follow-up to 2007's cult monster / mafioso mashup, Part 2 begins a couple of years after the original, with Jackie, now the head of the Franchetti crime family, unable to control his grief after losing his one true love. Oh, and things only get worse when a sudden attempt on his life sparks a full-blown gang war, opening the door for the darkness to re-emerge. New this year, something called quad wielding, a feature which allows players to use both powers of the darkness as well as conventional firearms at the same time. Plus, with a pretty unique take on fighting in different lighting situations as well as a gruesome assortment of matchmakers at your disposal, The Darkness 2 looks to be quite the time killer when it eventually hits the shelves in February next year. Next up, we dig into our spider holes and ghillies suit up in Sniper Ghost Warrior 2. Expanding on the precision shooting of the first game, this year's Sniper comes to us quite the looker, with graphics powered by the stunning CryEngine 3, so gamers can look forward to some lush environments. In addition, the game boasts even more challenge this time, with missions based in a variety of locations, such as jungles and mountain environments to name a few. Also, when it comes to realism, the guys have gone the extra mile with ballistics that take into account not only where you're aiming, but also the player's location, wind speed and direction, breathing rate, and distance from the target. With environments all based on real-world locations, if you're the kind that likes himself a little sneaky bang bang, Sniper 2 is set to hit in March 2012. Moving on, time for a little magic as we check in with one of the more interesting side-scrollers that we've seen in a while. This is Trine 2. Playing as one of the three heroes who have to venture through dangers untold in a fantastical fairy tale world, this physics-based puzzler is all about working together as you swap between characters on the fly in order to solve many of the game's problems. Working with fire, water, gravity and magic, get ready to climb the tallest trees and towers in this enchanted forest. So if you're one of those who've got a soft spot for games like The Lost Vikings or just love puzzlers, look out for Trine 2 when it hits the shelves early next month. Trine 2 is set to be a pretty addition to your collection and should be out in the next couple of months. Now before we go, there's one more thing that I reckon you're going to enjoy. The guys behind 2K's Spec Ops The Line from Jaeger came down to Singapore recently and told us what they loved about the game and explained to us why one of the most beautifully designed games of 2011 is set in a sand-ravaged Dubai. Take a look.
It's a game where we really wanted to take a look at some of the darker, grittier moral decisions that take place as a soldier on the battlefront. Basically what we did is we set up the situation in Dubai, which is this fantastic city. So after the city was wiped out, there was this battalion. It was an elite army battalion called the Damned 33rd, led by the legendary Colonel John Conrad. John Conrad tried to lead an evacuation out of the city that completely failed, was destroyed. Everyone thought that there were no survivors left in the city. Several months later, they got a transmission from the city that led the military to believe that there might still be people around.
We picked up this transmission.
This is Colonel John Conrad, United States Army. Has the evacuation of Dubai ended?
They send in this Delta Force group to see if there's any survivors and see what they can find. And as they go through the city, they just encounter a lot of really crazy military activity still in the city, some really difficult moral decisions that they have to make, and then some intense combat situations. A lot of it was just there was an amazing city architecturally, just visually beautiful, and we wanted to really contrast that with all the post-apocalyptic destruction that we caused with the sandstorm.
Well, we're the publisher on the game, and we've been working with these guys for years on this game, trying to just make it the most exciting and unique game that we can. When the project first started, there was a lot of inspiration from some novels and some movies out there. One of the novels, Heart of Darkness, was a big inspiration for the game, and also Apocalypse Now, obviously. Since then, we've really kind of taken it and let it mature and kind of took it in our own narrative path, really. There's a lot of other movies out there that really gave us some inspiration. Platoon and Full Metal Jacket, those really psychological war movies. We don't really think that a lot of the military games that are out there have actually shown that sort of darker psychological side to warfare. That's something we really wanted to capture and put that into a game.
Your main enemy in the game is other U.S. soldiers. It's the remnants of John Conrad's battalion. Kind of he's taken them in a crazy direction. But they're not representatives of the military. As it stands now, they've gone rogue and they've gone crazy. The other enemy that you fight in the game is the survivors that are left in Dubai. So it's a situation where you've walked into this town that's been wiped out, and you have people just kind of trying to survive any way they can, and then you have this this crazy rogue commander who's trying to maintain order. In both situations you're fighting, it's definitely not like the standard, Middle Eastern terrorist kind of situation. The civilian that stole water, and in Dubai, after all these sandstorms, water is very scarce, so that's a capital offense. So he sent in one of his soldiers to pull the guy out, but the soldier was a little overzealous in his duties and killed the guy's family. So he has both these people hanging in front of you, and you have to choose between the two of them. Typically, a lot of players will go in and they'll feel like, oh man, I got to decide between one of these two. This is a really difficult decision. But actually, there's several other options that you have. You can there's some snipers that are surrounding you, and you can fire on the snipers to try to fight against them, or you can try to cut down the civilians by shooting the rogues, or you can do what Conrad asks and shoot one of the two of them and make this decision. You know, there's a bunch of other ones in the game, but we try to make them all kind of play out in a different way and give you kind of a sense of how difficult it is to make these decisions. So one of our really big features is that we wanted to emphasize the sand gameplay in the game. So there's a bunch of different ways that you can interact with this. Some of it is, you know, scripted set pieces, like as you saw in the demo. There's a scene where you think you're on this basically just expanse of sand in the desert, and then you realize that you're actually on top of a glass rooftop that gets, you know, blown out from underneath you. So we have things like that. We have the sandstorms in the game that you have to fight through that really bring combat like up close and impersonal in your face. And then we have some generic features that just you can counter in the middle of combat. So for instance, if you throw a grenade and it lands on sand, it'll kick up a bunch of sand. So of course, you know, the grenade kills anyone that's right next to it, but also it'll blind and disorient people that are a little bit further away. And if you're too close to it, then, you know, because there's so much sand in the air, like, it might be difficult to see your enemies. And then we also have some other, you know, little features through the game. Like we have these things called sand falls that you can shoot, and then that can fall down and like stun your enemies. So there's a bunch of different ways that we use it.
You know this is a trap.
Absolutely. The whole city's gone crazy.
I'm gonna have to go back to the narrative. I mean, the story is just really amazing. I mean, we're really excited about getting this game in the hands of the public and, you know, getting everyone to actually see the story that we're creating.
Those guys pay so much attention to detail. The room we sat in for our demo was positioned and optimized precisely so that we would get the best experience. Everything from speaker volume and placement to lighting and seat position. I guess that's why they're the professionals, huh? All right, well, I guess I'd better wrap this up or else I could go on forever. Now remember, we've got full episodes of Game up on our website, just in case you miss me, or the show that is. And it's at espnstar.com/game. You can also be a fan on Facebook at facebook.com/ESSGame, or you can follow us on Twitter. Check us out at twitter.com/ESSGame. I'll see you next week, guys, and in the words of Monty Python, now for something completely different. Cheerio.